Hello, my name is Anthony Subara. I am the lead interviewer.
I'm Nicholas Rush. I'm the secondary interviewer.
And our videographer is Christian Kaur. Today we will be interviewing Mr. James A. Mills. So, Mr. Mills, what do you remember about your childhood?
My childhood, I grew up in Greenfield, Wisconsin, out on 28th and Holmes, in a small house with my parents and my sister and my brother.
Okay, and what were your parents' professions?
My father was a salesman and my mother was a secretary.
Okay, do you remember do you have any core memories about your parents at that time?
Well, out in Greenfield, we lived on a dead-end street and we just played a lot out in that area. And then, actually, I remember when my dad got a 1959 Chevrolet Impala convertible, and we would ride around in the car with the top down. That was a lot of fun.
What other you said you played. What kind of activities did you do?
We played, because it was a dead-end street, we played with some of the neighborhood kids. We played baseball on the street and rode our bikes, things like that.
Was there ever a moment where cars started passing and you had to get out of the way?
Well, no, because the neighbors all knew who we were. It was a short dead-end street anyhow, and so any of the cars that came down would come down slow, and we would move out of the way at that point.
Do you have any siblings?
They're deceased now. I had a younger brother and a sister 2 years older than me.
Okay. What was it like growing up with them? Did you guys get along?
Yes, we did get along. Mostly played with my brother. We were like brothers, I think, where we played a lot together, played baseball catch out in the yard, things like that, but we also did fight.
So what was it like growing up where you did in Greenfield?
Well, it was very nice. It was peaceful. We could ride our bikes on the streets out there because it was a quiet suburb area. And what I remember more, I went to the Catholic grade school, St. James Franklin grade school in Franklin. And so my sister and I would get on the bus on 27th and Holmes and then ride the bus all the way out past Rawson on 27th Street. And then as my brother was older, he'd get on the bus with us too, right out to school.
Okay. What was it like going to a Catholic grade school?
It was good. It was fun. It was strict, like they say. Compared to a lot of schools these days, we didn't have a lot of resources, but it was a good education. A lot of nuns at the time and some lay teachers. And we didn't have many social activities. However, when I got in 7th and 8th grade, they did start a basketball team for the boys. And most of our games were right over here at St. Greg Catholic School.
Okay. Now, you talked about those basketball games and how they played an important part.
Yes.
What did it feel like to be a part of those basketball games?
Oh, it was a lot of fun. I guess I was lucky because I was the tallest player. It doesn't necessarily mean I was the best player, but we just had a lot of fun practicing and playing, getting along good.
Is there a particular moment from one of those games that you can remember?
Not really, to tell you the truth. We weren't real good, mostly because we didn't have a lot of experience at the time, and so I don't remember anything in particular.
At that time, what did you do for fun besides playing with your brother?
Really watching TV, the old TV shows, the westerns and things like that, or just playing out in the yard. And we did also out there, some of us neighborhood kids, there's farm fields out there that really weren't being used. And we would take our lawnmowers and go out to the farm field at the end of our street and cut the field down so that we could play baseball. And that was a lot of fun.
Do you remember any TV shows or anything in specific that stood out or that were your favorite?
It was the westerns like Roy Rogers and trying to think of some of the other ones, John Wayne shows, things like that.
So what were the kids and your friends like in the early school at St. James?
What were they like?
Yes.
Just nice. Everybody got along good, and really got to know everybody good. There was like 30 of us in the small classroom. So, we all got along real good.
Now, going on a little bit further, I understand that you spent elementary through middle school at St. James.
Yes.
Now, during that time, did you see any change within the area surrounding the school?
I don't think so. One of the things that used to be out there, it wasn't a change, but was the 41 Twin Outdoor Theater. That was it was like 1 block away from the school. But there weren't too many changes at that time. In fact, the point is that was before the Expressways existed. And so 27th Street was Highway 41, the main highway from here down to Chicago. And, there'd be a lot of traffic on that road. And then the Expressways came later. But other than that, there was just some new housing development in the area. That was about it at that time.
Now, since that was before the expressway system, when that expressway did start to pop up and did start construction, how did that affect you?
Not too much directly, but I do remember the first part of the expressway, as I remember it, was from about 26th Street east to downtown. And I remember our father putting us in the car and driving us down and showing us the expressway and saying what a neat new thing that was. It was going to make it easier for everybody to get around the city.
Do you recall any negative feedback from maybe friends that they thought like the highway was a bad thing in some sort of way?
Not at that time. Later on in life there was, but not at that time.
Now, where did you attend high school?
Well, the first 2 years was at Greenfield High School, and then my last 2 years was at West Milwaukee High School.
Okay, and how was that time at Greenfield High School?
It was good. It was fun. It was my sister, since she was 2 years older, told me what to expect, and we would get on the school bus right near our house and take the bus up to the high school. Greenfield High School at that time, the only original part of the school that's left right now is the old gymnasium. You can see an arched roof when you drive on 60th Street. I don't know why, but they left the old gym up in the middle of the complex. But anyhow, what I was looking forward to, it was an experience that was so much bigger than grade school, and a lot more kids, but I made friends. And then I didn't play football, but I did play basketball and went out for track. So that was fun.
Now, how was that experience in basketball, given that you had heavy emotions with that also in middle school?
It was good. We had coaches that were peer coaches, whereas in grade school, our coaches were just some fathers that were trying to teach us. And so the coaches were what we call gym coaches for the main part. And, I got to meet new guys and play with them. And not only when I was a freshman and sophomore, my team, but to look up to the older classmen and see how they played was interesting.
Now, seeing how you said that the gym is the only original standing part of the high school now.
Yes.
What is it like looking at the school now and seeing all the new development?
Mixed emotions. It's nice, and luckily we were in the new gymnasium a few years ago when our granddaughter played basketball there. And it's really nice, and it's good for the students. And also they have the new swimming area, and that's nice too. So, I saw, well, okay, the history's gone, but actually what really did kind of touch me was I got to peek into the old gymnasium and see. So I told Joan, I said, look, this is where I played my freshman and sophomore years in the old gym.
Now, going on, did you think at the time in high school that you wanted to pursue college?
I really wasn't sure early on. Then as I got to closer in my senior year. I kind of knew I needed to do that and wanted to.
Do you know what like the normal was for kids in high school at that time? Like, was it normal for kids to go to college, or was it really up in the air for a while?
It was a mix. One of the issues that we had was during the Vietnam War time, and that's when they had the draft. And we saw, even older classmen get drafted right out of high school, or some of them decided to volunteer so they could choose where they wanted to go, like Army, Navy, Air Force, whatever. And so, there was a mix of kids that wanted to go to college to learn, and others that decided they should go to college to try to get the student deferment so they didn't have to go to Vietnam. That wasn't my case, but that's what some of them were doing.
And you said you spent your last 2 years at West Milwaukee High.
Yes.
What was it like over there compared to Greenfield?
It was a lot different. It's a smaller school, and my mother had gone there, my father too, and so they kind of told us, it's a smaller school, but you really get to know everybody, and I did, and that was very nice. I really enjoyed that.
Are there any stand-up moments from your time over there at West Milwaukee that stick out to you?
The biggest one is meeting my wife, Joan. She was a cheerleader, and I knew her the junior year, but we weren't dating at that point. But we started dating our senior year, and some of it was I was a basketball player and she was a cheerleader, and we'd just go out for dates after the basketball games. So that's how everything started.
True high school sweethearts in every sense of the word.
Yes.
No, going on.
And actually 55 years later. We've been married 52 and a half, but we graduated 55 years ago now.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Now, did you decide to continue and pursue college?
Yes, well, yeah, in high school, there was the pressure of the war. When you're 18, you sign up, and then they had the lottery, and I had number 50, which was a very low number. And so we saw guys just getting drafted. Unfortunately, we knew one of our classmates that was a year older did get killed in Vietnam. And so, that was a little bit of my motivation, was I don't want to get drafted and go over to Vietnam. And the other part was just, I wasn't completely sure what course of professionalism I wanted to go in, but I knew I wanted to advance. So I went to MATC for the first 2 years.
What was your time like in the area of MATC?
It was good. I enjoyed it. Just a different college experience, even though it's local. I lived at home and took the bus down there every day. But I enjoyed it because it was good instructors and good classes.
What was the area like around MATC, given that it's closer to the heart of Milwaukee?
It was okay. There was different things. I'm trying to think back, but that was before the Bradley Center was built. But Ambrosia Chocolate was kitty corner from MATC, and I ended up getting a part-time job there, along with some other students. Unfortunately, the rescue mission was located just east of MATC at that time. So you'd get off the bus, and people would ask you for money and things, and you just have to kind of ignore that. But the rest of the area was okay, I think.
Now, you said at that time the Bradley Center wasn't built yet.
Yes.
What was the reaction? What was your reaction when it did get constructed?
Well, I thought it was really nice that they were doing it. Very neat. That Gene Pettit Bradley was donating the money to build it. And actually, my experience before that was I spent a lot of time at the old arena watching Bucks games and Marquette college games. And I did think, well, okay, they need a new arena. It's going to be really cool. So I like the idea of it.
Do you have any initial reaction to when you first stepped into the Bradley Center?
Yeah, I just thought, wow, this is really cool. Very modern and very nice. And we always thought it was as soon as you walk in the door.
Now, you said there was, when you worked downtown at MATC near the Ambrosia Chocolate Company,
yes,
there was a lot of people who were asking for change.
Yes.
Almost panhandlers.
Right.
What was your reaction to that?
Well, the students all learned just to try to ignore them and keep walking, basically. It's just say, no, I can't, or whatever, Not be rude to them, but you had to, otherwise you'd be giving money out all the time, and actually as students, we didn't have money either, so.
So was MATC the only college you attended?
No, I went there the first 2 years, and then I transferred over to UWM my last year and a half. I didn't finish at UWM. But
what was that experience like going from MATC to UWM?
It was a lot different. I knew what to expect pretty much from friends that were going to UWM and things I had heard, but it was really neat to have a larger campus, more buildings, more students, more resources.
What was the community like there at UWM versus MATC?
I didn't get involved in the social side of it too much because I was working and Joan and I were dating. But everybody was friendly. The trouble is that then all of a sudden the Vietnam protesters started coming on campus. And even if you were against the war, they were really disrupting the campus. And it got to a point where I remember seeing the Milwaukee Police, the tactical squad, gear up on the side streets and then come marching onto the campus with all their stuff. And then, for me, it's like, okay, get out of here. And, you'd see the tear gas from a distance and stuff. And it's like, I didn't want any part of that. So.
Could you tell us more about that emotion that was played into those riots or protests?
Well, one of the things is, a lot of other people agreed with this. What I felt, I saw was some of these were professional protesters. They were outsiders that were coming in. They weren't students, and we really resented that. And some of them were you could tell they were ready for violence. So we didn't agree with that either. So that's when I got out of the way. I do remember one time when a couple of protesters were trying to block a door to the business school, and there were some girls that were afraid to go in, and I said, come on, and I said, follow me, and they followed me, and we just went right through them and into our classroom at that time. But eventually the protesters shut down the campus. So,
what was that campus shutdown like?
It was lousy. We wanted to get our education. We were against the war, but it's like, you're not proving your point by shutting down a college campus. And like I said, these were outsiders anyhow, mostly that were there to cause trouble. So I remember being in one lecture hall in late afternoon, and it was a computer class, I think. And the professor was talking up in front, and all of a sudden he said, thank you. And we didn't know what he meant. And all of a sudden the fire alarm goes off. The protester came in to ring the fire alarm to get us to get out of there, so. Oh, well.
Now, was there any sense of lingering fear you had when these protests were going on and you were still attending classes?
No, I didn't have any fear for the most part. The protesters weren't, for the most part, bothering students violently. They were trying to stop them from going to class. And to prove a point. But what I saw from a distance was where they were more after the police at that point too, because the TV cameras were there and stuff. So, they'd throw rocks at the police, and police would try to break them up, that type of thing.
Do you feel like with the outsiders coming in to protest the Vietnam War, do you think that hurt the sense of community there at UWM?
I think it made it stronger in the long run. People just resented it so much. And eventually, when classes resumed, the next semester, people just felt, good sense of relief. There were, if you're going to march, there were marches down Wisconsin Avenue at that time, too, against the war. And so a lot of students felt, okay, go march on the streets around the campus or downtown.
Do you remember any of those marches in particular down Wisconsin Avenue?
Nothing real particular. I just remember that they happened.
Now, you talked a little about how you were very busy and didn't participate a lot in the social aspects of college because you were working.
Right.
What was your work experience like during that time?
It was good. Are you talking about at UWM? Did you say?
Whether at MATC or UWM.
Okay. Well, at MATC, I got a part-time job at Ambrosia Chocolate Company, and they hired 4 or 5 of us students, and it was mostly to clean chocolate off of tanks and things like that. It was kind of funny, but even if you took a shower at work, the locker room was in the middle of the plant. So by the time you walked outdoors, you already were absorbing some of the chocolate smell again into your skin. And I'd come home and go up by Joan's house, and she would laugh because I smelled like chocolate. But the good side effect of that was that she and her mother liked chocolate. Ambrosia gave us free samples, so I'd bring them chocolate, and they liked that.
Now,
can I just say at UWM, I got a part-time job at that time. To get a job, you had to go to an office area to look for jobs that employers had posted, and you looked at 3x5 index cards. And I found a job at Ambur Distilled Products. That's spelled Ambur. And at that time, they were on 32nd an hour. And so I went and interviewed, and the lady owner of the company, along with her husband, she interviewed me and hired me to work part-time there, just doing general labor and helping out. And eventually it turned into a full-time job, and eventually I became plant manager there.
Would you say that that jobs at that time were easy to come by or more difficult to find?
They were kind of medium. You could find a job, but it might not be the job you want. It just depended on what you were looking for.
What was the area like, either around Ambur Distilled Products or the Ambrosia Chocolate Company?
Well, Ambur Distilled Products was originally on 32nd an hour. At that time, the area was okay, and it's not far from the police station, which is still there. But while I was working there, you could see that the area was getting a little rougher, and the owners decided we were landlocked too, and they needed to expand the business. They needed to build a new plant, so they built a plant out in Glendale, and that's when they asked me to become plant manager. But after that is when that area really went downhill fast.
Do you remember any specific examples of how the area start to get more rough, or what you saw personally that the company decided, we got to start getting out of
Right.
here?
The company mostly decided to get out there because they needed to expand. But we also did see more crime in the area, just, broken windows, cars being broken into, that type of thing.
Now, what was it like relocating to Glendale and becoming plant manager there?
It was really nice. Joan and I, trying to remember now. Let's see, we were ready to get married in the fall, and that's when the owners were building the plant. And so when they asked me, if I wanted to be plant manager, I said yes, because it was a good job. And the area out there was so nice, being out in the suburban area, and we could have our doors open and, things like that.
You talk about having your doors open. What was the community like around that area?
In Glendale?
Yeah.
That was a new industrial park just north of where Johnson Controls is right now. And it was nice. It was very nice. Being open, the whole area. Nice grassy area. So we had a lot of room.
So given that you can keep your doors open, were you close with lots of your neighbors and neighboring houses near there?
No, in Glendale?
Yes.
No, Brady Company was a company that was next door to us. They were distant enough that we weren't real close with them.
Okay. Now, given that was for Ambur Distilled Products, what was the area like around Ambrosia Chocolate Company?
Well, it was a typical downtown area. There was, from what I remember, before the Bradley Center, when Ambrosia was there, and then across the street there was some apartments. One of the guys that worked with us lived in one of those apartments. And I don't remember a lot about the rest of the area at the time. I think part of it at that time was when they were knocking down buildings because they were going to expand the expressway east. And then Mayor Norquist stopped that. They actually did build the expressway east, actually. And then after that, Mayor Norquist is the one that decided that that was detrimental to the area. And it was better to knock down the expressway and have city streets, which they've done now.
What was your reaction when he suddenly halted the expressway system in favor of city streets?
Actually, I was against it because I like the expressways, and I thought it's easier to get around the city with it. Although I do say that the downtown area where they did that particular thing, that's where the Bucks have built the arena now and Fiserv Forum, and they're building a hotel down there. And just a side note too, I don't know if you're aware, but when they were building the expressways, 43rd Street down here, they were supposed to run the expressway from where it ends on National Avenue all the way out to 894. That was part of the original plan. And there were activists around here that protested a lot and stopped it. They said it would divide the community too much.
Do you remember any of those protests in particular?
They weren't, they were just, they'd either march downtown or had little protests here, nothing violent or anything. But they were, contacting the politicians and state officials to say they just didn't want the expressway through here.
Now, given that you spent a lot of time, whether it was your time in college at MATC and UWM, to even now enjoying the Fiserv Forum for Bucks games and different events, how can you say, or how was it like seeing the downtown develop from this sort of area of industrialism to an entertainment hub?
Well, I think it's good. I remember when Joan and I were dating, Wisconsin Avenue was very lively on weekend nights. In fact, people used to go cruising down there with their cars, and I was one of them that did sometimes. But also, it was the movie theaters down there. All the way from the river up to 6th Street, you could go down there, it was safe. And I told your dad that I took Joan on a date once to the what's now where the Milwaukee Symphony is, that theater. We went on a date to see Dr. Zhivago there, which was a very popular movie at the time. But there were other movies too. So the area was nice, and then after a while it kind of just declined, and now it's really nice to see it come back again.
Now, going on past college and formative years, as you sort of settled, what made you choose where you live now for just to settle down?
Yeah, when Joan and I were looking for houses, we had Jeff, our oldest son, was 2 years old, and then Ken was just born, and we were renting, and we decided it was time to buy a house. And houses were selling very fast at that time, and like they kind of were just lately. And so we missed out on a few houses, but we wanted to stay somewhere close to her parents and my mother. And so we found this house, and it was close to them, but also Joan liked the fact that this house was right across the street from, at that time, a neighborhood school for our sons.
So the school that stands there now is Spanish Immersion. What was it like seeing it develop over the years?
Well, it was a neighborhood school, and that's where Jeff and Ken went, and it was real nice. And then because enrollment was declining across the city, they were looking for schools to close, and they wanted to close this school. And Joan and I ended up leading the fight to keep it open. We really didn't want to be the leaders, but we had a nice group of parents from PTA, and everybody was against them closing it. And so we met with school board officials, and one of the school board officials at the time said, well, we can make a deal. Your kids can stay there, and we're going to phase them out, and we're going to phase in the Spanish immersion school. So we agreed to that deal. And they didn't completely hold up their end of the bargain. Our youngest son had to go to Fairview the last 2 years. but they did change it to the Spanish immersion school, and then after that they put a big addition on the school too.
What was it like? What did it feel like getting to keep the school here?
Well, we were happy that it was still here. We had no idea what they would do with this building or this area if it wasn't a school at all. So we were happy with that part, but we wished it could have stayed a neighborhood school.
Is there any reason in particular you wish it would have stayed a neighborhood school?
Yeah, because then kids in this area could just go to that school like our kids did, and that's one of the things that the other parents felt too. You know, they wanted their kids to go to a school that was close by.
Do you think that lost a sense of community?
Yes, I was just going to say that, right, exactly.
So going on a little bit more, are there, just talking about outstanding moments that you remember from your time here in Milwaukee, what are some moments that stand out from you from any point of your life that stick out to you in terms of this rich history of Milwaukee?
Mostly it's like going downtown to the Bucks games or Marquette games, and I'm saying early on at the arena, and many of the concerts and things, and actually the development of Summerfest. I mean, we saw that actually literally start up. It was at the start, from what I remember, it was tents and muddy grounds. And people go down there to watch some of the acts, and you'd have to walk through mud. It rained one of the years, and then watch the growth and development of Summerfest over the years. That was very nice, very neat.
What were some of those initial Summerfests like from what you can grab from your memory?
I don't remember which acts we saw. If they had big names, I really can't recall. It was nice. It was fun. It was something to do. We would do that, and I remember one year we did that, and then we went to the French thing. I can't think of the name of it now. The French thing downtown too, though. We'd go to that. Storm the Bastille thing.
Now, what are your emotions towards seeing how Summerfest has developed over the years to what it is now as the biggest music festival?
Yeah, I think it's great. It's good for everybody, wants to go there. But it's not only Summerfest for us. It's also the other festivals that they have there. A couple of our favorites are Irish Fest and Festa Italiana. We've always enjoyed.
Do you have any specific experiences that you really like from other sort of festivals, or just more of that life down in the city?
The Lakefront for sure. Going back to Summerfest, we saw the Eagles group there, a few years ago, and they were really good. We've seen a lot of acts. The other part is not only Summerfest, but what they call the Miller Theater now, or I think it's a Milwaukee Theater, that's connected to the arena. And going way back, we'd go to sports shows there or the International Folk Fair, and it'd be in both the arena and what they call the auditorium at the time. They have hallways that connect the two buildings. So we'd go there and watch things like that. I also remember going to the auditorium at the time to see Paul Revere and the Raiders. That was nice. But a few years ago, Joan and I went to the Milwaukee Theater and we saw Frankie Valli, and that was very good too. So they've really changed the old auditorium into a nice theater too.
What was the environment kind of like in that auditorium? Was it like it was today, or was
No, not at all. I mean, it doesn't exist, I guess, now. From what I remember at that time, the auditorium, it had balconies up above, and just the basic floor, kind of like what the Panther Arena is now, except for the balconies up above. And they had a stage at the end, but it's totally different now with the theater. But what's neat is if you've ever been in the lobby area, you can see they retained the old lobby, and that's really nice.
Now, at many moments in your life, you mentioned how sports, in particular basketball, have played a sort of important role. What are your do you have any specific memories pertaining to sports in Milwaukee that stick out to you?
Yeah, as a kid, actually, we did go to the Braves games, the Milwaukee Braves at County Stadium, and that was fun. I can't name specific games, but we did. I can date myself. We actually watched Hank Aaron and Eddie Matthews and Warren Spahn and a lot of those guys. And in fact, until a few years ago, one of the original Braves players lived right up here on 61st in Cleveland. But I remember going to those games at County Stadium, and then later on, when the Brewers came here, going to County Stadium to watch them play. And then it was really neat to see, at the time, Miller Park being built and watching the Brewers there.
Now, if you could take us back just a little bit.
Sure.
If you can remember, what was the feeling in the air when you went to those Brave games?
That was, you talk about sense of community. It was, from what I remember. I was a kid, but just fun. Everybody was really into watching them play and cheering on the players and that type of thing. And obviously at that time you didn't have to have security. You just walk in and have fun.
When the Braves were eventually sold, what did that do to the community, especially in Milwaukee?
Yeah, that was hard. That was crummy. There was a lot of resentment, and I remember that people were really mad about that happened. So we were thankful when Bud Selig brought the Brewers here. I do remember because when I lived in West Milwaukee at the time with my mother and my brother had a neat little go-kart. It was pretty fast. And we took it down there to County Stadium, and we drive the go-kart in the parking lot. So, because there's nobody else there, it was kind of fun.
What was your initial reaction when they started construction on the new Miller Park?
Yeah, it was good. I was all for it. A lot of people were. I remember a few people, including one neighbor here, that was totally against taxpayers' money for it. But I thought that we needed it, and especially I thought we needed a roof at the time, and I was glad to see Bud Selig pushing for that, to have the roof. And in hindsight, it's a big success.
Now, in the development of Miller Park, I'm not sure if you remember, but there was a large crane.
Yes.
They blew that crashed. Yep. What was your emotions during that time?
It was terrible. At the time I was working at Ambur on the north side. Not Ambur, a different company. But anyhow, on the north side, and I was driving home when they came on the radio and said that. And I was able to drive past on the expressway before they closed that part of the expressway off, just to get home. But, they're talking on the radio about how terrible it was, and I thought the same thing. Really feel bad for those guys.
Were you scared for the future of the park?
No, I don't think so. I don't remember what the exact details were, but they had so much of it built already, that they were just going to proceed with the construction then. The result, the cause of that was high winds, unfortunately. In fact, they used to talk about Big Blue at the time, the crane.
Yeah.
Do you have any other specific experiences, especially in the city, or any other events that you remember that you want to talk about or explain your feelings on?
I really can't think of any right now. I'm just drawing a blank. Just that I'm grateful. I'm grateful that I met Joan, and we've had a great life together and raised our 2 sons and had a lot of fun with them.
So, what was it like raising a family raising kids here in Milwaukee?
For us, it was great. Jeff and Ken got along good with neighborhood kids, and that goes back to the neighborhood school. They, made friends. In fact, they're still friends with some of the kids from grade school, even though Jeff and Ken live a little distance away now. so that was part of the community in the neighborhood school. And they play out here on the street or play on the playground, and everything was fine at the time.
How vital do you think the presence of neighborhood schools was for the children?
Well, I think, well, it's a mix, because it's vital, but I also understand the specialty schools. And I think that's a good thing too, for people that want to send their kids to a specialty school.
When you, in choosing where you wanted to raise your kids, was there any suburbs or Milwaukee itself that stood out to you in terms of this is the place where I want to raise them?
Well, the main factor, like I mentioned before, is that we really wanted to stay close to Joan's parents and my mother. Joan's parents lived in West Dallas, my mother in West Milwaukee. They were getting older, so we wanted to be able to help them. Plus, they helped us with Jeff and Ken when they were little at times where we needed them to watch the kids. So we didn't want to go too far away. And so we did look in West Dallas, but we just couldn't get a house. And then we saw this house, and like I said, Joan fell in love with it, with the school across the street and everything else.
Do you think maintaining that that sense of family, even to like parents
Mm-hmm.
and for your children, do you think that's vital?
Yes. Yeah, very much so. We're so lucky, and I'm grateful that we all feel that way, the whole family. And my parents were divorced, so that was a little bit tough. But then we really appreciated my mother and my grandmother that helped us out. And Joan's parents were great when I met them. Side comment was that he was a West Milwaukee policeman, but he was a fun guy. And so we always felt the family is important.
Now, could you talk about what was it like? What was it like for him as a West Milwaukee policeman?
At the time, West Milwaukee had a lot of bars and the factories, and he knew the community. It was, talk about community, West Milwaukee was a very good community, historically, and he knew a lot of the residents there. And then also, though, as being a policeman, he'd talk about going into the bars and breaking up bar fights and things. And some of it was like he knew some of the people, they'd just have to go in there and say, cut it out or something. Wasn't a lot of violent crime at the time. So.
Do you think he had did he have a different reaction than you or a different view of West Milwaukee?
No, I think it was about the same with the history of West Milwaukee. Everybody that lived in West Milwaukee, or, like he worked there, just a really good, close-knit community.
I'd like to circle back to this idea of you taking charge of trying to maintain the school here.
Yes.
What was that like?
It was interesting. I was busy with my job at Ambur, very busy, but we felt so strong about not closing the school, and they were talking about closing other schools around the city too. And we held meetings with some of the parents here, and that's when and Joan was involved with PTA and things, and she knew the teachers. And so some of the parents, that's when they said, "Oh, we want you guys in charge." And so that's when we contacted school board members and things like that. And I actually spoke at one of the school board meetings, and just said that we didn't want the school to close. It didn't do any good, but, we tried.
So what was your initial reaction diving into that position of leadership?
I felt I could handle it. I mean, I was being a leader at work too. So I wasn't afraid of it too much. It's just that we were so busy at work and had other things going on. So I will say at the end of that school year, the citywide PTA gave Joan and I an award that we have somewhere here. Just an award for our efforts, I guess.
At the time, do you recall this happening to a lot of other schools in the area or in the Milwaukee area, or was just kind
Yes.
of with you?
No, it was other schools too, because it was declining enrollment, and the school board felt they needed to, close some schools to consolidate. And, I mean, we didn't want to point out another school in the area and say, close that one. We didn't do that. But, there was other schools, like I said, and so it was on the news a lot at that time.
What do you think was one of the biggest reasons for the declining enrollment in the area?
I don't remember, that they gave a reason. I'm sure they did at the time, but, I'm not sure what it was. I mean, I think it was mostly just fewer kids in the city. Yeah. Not kids going to other schools so much, but just fewer kids.
What did it feel like to win that award? Can you tell us a little bit more?
Yeah, that was nice. We appreciated it, and we were embarrassed because Joan and I feel like we're humble, most of the time. And but they told us we were invited to the dinner. We didn't know we were going to get the award till we were at the big dinner at the Bavarian House. But they just said, well, you guys are going to be invited there along with other people. And then they announced it there. So we were surprised and thankful.
And I'd like to circle back more to the idea of the Vietnam War.
Okay.
Obviously, there was a large presence with all the protests and very vocal things that happened around Milwaukee.
Mm-hmm.
How was life in Milwaukee and your reaction at the end of the Vietnam War?
We were glad it was over. Like I said, we knew a guy from a year older than us that was killed there. We have classmates that were over there and classmates are people I worked with over the years that don't want to talk about it at all, their experience, and I understand that. Others that have talked a little bit about it. And in fact, side point is, Joan was a medical transcriptionist at the VA hospital at the time, so she typed the reports of the guys coming back here that were injured, many of them severely injured, and she saw a lot of them, if they were in the hallways and things like that too. And so we were, really against the war and seeing everybody get hurt. And everybody was saying, what's the point of the war? Nobody really knew. So we were glad when it ended.
What was it like speaking to those people who came back from the war and who didn't want to speak about it at all?
Then you leave it alone. I worked with a guy at a different company on the north side that had been over there. And if you walked up behind him and called his name, he'd jump, and it was just from being in the war and the noises and things. And so I learned to walk way around him and try to approach him from the front all the time to talk to him. And there's others that just don't want to talk about it. And if they'll either tell you they don't want to talk about it or just say, yeah, it was bad, and you leave it at that.
What was the sense of community like after the war had ended?
I think it was, much better then. It was a sense of relief for everybody. Just, and like I said, at the time they had the draft too, and they were drafting people, so, then parents weren't as worried about their kids getting drafted to go over there to fight.
Now, overall, how, from your childhood to where we stand now, what are your thoughts on the overall development of Milwaukee from a very industrial place to a more of a place of entertainment, at least as it pertains to downtown?
Well, right, I'd say more of a place of entertainment and also more of a technical place than being industrialized in the past, where we had all the big factories and things. And I think it's a mixed feeling, because those were a lot of good jobs. Some were entry-level jobs that people could, if you got a job, okay, I'll go back to some of the breweries. When we grew up, there was Schlitz and Pabst and things like that. And you could, get in there at an entry level and make good money and work your way up. And same thing with some of the other factories. So it was sad to see those go, but on the other, I understand the technical side, and that's good, but not everybody can do that. So I think it's still sad that they lost a lot of industry.
Does part of you wish that they kept at least a few more breweries around, or
yes.
more
Yeah.
industry?
Yes, definitely. Yeah, just for the reasons I was saying. A man that lived in your house 2 owners ago, he worked at A.L. Smith on the north side. It's a big empty building now. Talgo is in there right now. Part of it, I think, they lease out to work on train cars. But that's what they call the Century City area now, where A.L. Smith was, and they employed a lot of people. I mean, thousands. And so they were a good employer, and there's others too.
When you were younger and seeing a lot of that employment at those industry jobs, how vital do you think it was to the development of Milwaukee?
Oh, very vital, because people were making good money, so they could afford homes and at least decent cars and live a good lifestyle.
Now, what was your life working at Ambur? Different from the one that you were working at UWM, the other Ambur that you had.
Okay, first of all, Ambur was a liquor rectifier and bottler, and not many people know about it. But we got the liquor from distilleries. When I started at 32nd an hour, it was a small building, like I said, and we got most of the liquor in barrels, like you see the whiskey barrels now. We'd get brandy in that and things. So we had a few storage tanks. When they moved to Glendale, we had an outside tank storage area with tall tanks, like 10,000 gallons or so. And it'd be brandy, gin, vodka, whiskey, rum, tequila, all kinds of things. Mm-hmm. And we bottled and private labeled it, sold it throughout the state of Wisconsin with private labels, like Discount Liquor and some of the others, and also our own labels. And I'm not sure if I answered your question.
No, you did.
Okay.
How did it feel working for like a central hub for liquor distribution?
It was kind of neat. I enjoyed the job. I enjoyed the owners. I was still close friends with the owners until just recently. They both passed away. But it was kind of neat. We knew also the responsibilities, and we didn't like to see people overindulge. And it always did bother us if we heard, like sometimes, liquor stores were worried too if they had their name on a bottle and then there was a fatal accident or something with their bottle in a car. So that side of it bothered us. We never really tried to promote any of that, just responsible drinking.
Yeah. Was there any fear that came from that? From the idea of some people might be overindulging from the things that you're packaging?
Oh, yes. I mean, we knew that. Like I said, we didn't promote it and we didn't really want that. We also got into a lot of the cordials, slow gins and, different cordials like that. And we actually copied some of the name brands like Galliano. We had our version. Southern Comfort, we had a version. But so some of those drinks, weren't as powerful at least. But, it was a business.
How long did you work there?
18 years. Yes. And it was purchased by Peter Eline. I worked with him for 2 years. Then he wanted to make a change. He did let me go. And he went out of business shortly after that.
How did Ambur develop over those 18 years?
Well, excellent. When I was working there, it actually had originally started downtown, where the Expressway is. And when the Expressway went there, that was prior to my time, then they bought the building on 32nd an hour and moved there. So I just got to see the growth of the company. One of the things the owners did is hired a man that had a liquor store in Port Washington, and he became a salesman to go throughout the state of Wisconsin. And he was excellent. And he's the one that really contributed to the growth of the company.
Where did you work after that?
After that, I had various jobs. But then eventually I worked at a company on the north side called Leafitech. It's a rodenticide company, and I worked there for 10 years. Started as a third shift supervisor, worked my way up to production manager, operations manager. We got bought out by a new parent company in France. I got to go to France 3 times, and that was enjoyable. And then eventually the new CEO wanted to make a change, so he released me.
So in those opportunities, you got to go to France.
Yes.
What was that experience like coming from a place like Milwaukee?
Oh, unbelievable. Yeah, the flight over and land in Paris, and the parent company was located in Agen, France, which is between Bordeaux and Toulouse. And so then when you land in Paris, then you take the next flight down towards Toulouse or Bordeaux, and then from there they drive me to the parent company. And got to tour their plant and see there was different manufacturing than what we had here. And they're trying to find some similarities.
Okay. So, with those experiences of France in mind, would you prefer to stay in a place like Milwaukee?
Yeah, I mean, I like it here. I don't know if I'd want to live in France or not, but it was interesting. We saw some of the old towns and villages and things, and some of the wineries there, that stuff. It's very interesting.
Now, over the course, you've obviously seen a lot of history in how Milwaukee has developed in not only its industry, but it's in its community and going further. So, in that, I was wondering, what might you hope for the future development of Milwaukee?
Well, I'm hoping that we have a good mayor right now with the recent elections, and everything he's saying sounds good, and our police chief sounds good, and so I really hope they can stop the crime, because I think it's terrible, that and the driving, but the driving's not only in Milwaukee. We were just out in Waukesha today and saw bad driving all over. So I think that's what they need to tackle first, and then beyond that, there's so many issues for them because taxes are high. People can't, not everybody can afford the taxes. So they got to figure out a way of reducing costs, I guess.
Do you think, what is your view of like the past Milwaukee mayors and their view on crime and how it has developed to modern day?
I think they're all pretty good. I can remember way back to Mayor Meyer and Police Chief Breyer, and Police Chief Breyer was very strict, but things have changed. And Mayor Barrett, I think he tried hard, but didn't like all of his approach, and that's why I think that Mayor Johnson has a different approach, and hopefully it works.
Do you think the crime is stronger now than it was before?
Well, definitely. The murder rate's up, robberies, car thefts.
So you didn't have to worry about a lot of the issue of crime when you were growing up in your early stages of living here in Milwaukee? No,
not at all. Out in Greenfield, there was almost no crime, and when we first moved here in Milwaukee, there was very little crime too. It was a very safe area.
And seeing how as it developed and the crime rates has sort of risen, what is your reaction to that as you grew older?
Well, I don't like it, and I fear for other people. Less, than myself, but I just fear for like Joan, our sons, or neighbors, or anybody like that. I definitely don't like the crime.
Do you remember anything about civil rights activism over the course of your life here in Milwaukee?
Yes. I remember Father Grappi and his famous march across the 16th Street Viaduct. At the time, that's when I was in high school and lived with my mother and grandma in West Milwaukee. And, on a Sunday he marched over, and they marched up into West Milwaukee and then back across. But I remember a lot of the civil rights marches.
Do you recall any specific emotions or events from So specifically that walk that like really stood out to you or
Yes.
that were important?
Yes, my brother and I, being teenagers, we were curious. So they went up Greenfield. Thing is, some of them drove cars. We were on Scott Street, right in between Greenfield and National. So some of them were in cars and they were hanging out the cars yelling and stuff. So my brother and I stayed back. But then we knew they went up Greenfield and they went over towards the VA hospital, and then they came back down National. When they did that, my brother and I, being curious teenagers, walked over to National, and I remember seeing one guy that his face was all bloody, and he said he had gotten hit by a rock or something, things like that. People were angry about the marches, but the marchers were angry too. So, my brother and I backed away from that.
What was your reaction to Father Grappi and his cause, the cause that he was fighting for?
Oh, I just didn't like the way he went about it. The cause was fine, but not his methods.
Do you have any particular methods that you didn't agree with that you remember?
His marches, but he knew that some of that was violence, from what we saw firsthand. He had to know. I mean, he, instead of trying to have peaceful marches or something, or, whatever he needed to do, but it just was violence, and it just wasn't right.
Was there anybody you knew in your life at the time that had had a positive or very positive response to Father Grappi and his marches?
Yes. Our priest at St. Florian's Church, Father Dismas Becker, he became a friend of Father Grappi, and so he worked with him on that. And eventually, Dismas Becker left the priesthood. He was on the news sometime too, but so, like I said, he became friends with Grappi.
What was it like? So I know you went to a religious elementary / grade school.
Yes.
What was it like growing up religious in Milwaukee?
Oh, it was fine. I mean, out there in Greenfield, we had neighborhood kids that went to the same school, so that was, fine. In fact, at the time I was going there, St. Charles Borromeo was new church in, it's actually in Milwaukee, I guess, right on the Greenfield-Milwaukee border. And they started out their church in a Wisconsin Bell telephone building up on the second floor. I remember my brother and I and my mother would go there for a while on Sundays. And they actually had mass, and you'd have all the big telephone equipment right in the same room. And then St. Charles built the church, and I became altar boy there while I was altar boy at St. James too. So, but at that time there was a lot of Catholics around us, and it was fine.
Was there any disconnect between the Catholics and the non-Catholics in the area?
Not that I felt. I don't think so.
Mm-hmm. So, do you feel like the community was ultimately stronger because of the faith?
Yes, I guess so. Right? Everybody had same feelings, same thoughts.
Did you have any specific reasoning for going to a public high school rather than a Catholic one?
So a lot of it was money.
Yeah.
I think at the time, and my parents didn't have a lot of money, and so and actually I kind of didn't mind it at the time to see something different. And my sister, like I said, was 2 years older, so she was going to Greenfield already, and she was telling me about it because she was involved in a lot of activities and really liked it. So she convinced me that it was a good thing.
On that topic, where did your children go to high school?
They both went to Hamilton High School, and yeah, that's basically it.
So was there any, on the topic of Catholic versus non-Catholic high schools, was there any intention or motivation to have them go to Hamilton versus, say, a private or Catholic high school?
Just no. I mean, they were going to the public schools here. They went to the school across the street, to 55th Street, and then they did go to Audubon Middle School. So they just continued their course into public school, high school.
Where did your children attend college then?
They didn't. I mean, eventually Ken he took some courses at WATC.
Okay. Did they, after high school, did they choose to stay local around here in Milwaukee?
Yes. Jeff lives out in Greendale, and Ken lives out in Merton, out by Sussex.
What is it like to, what does it feel like to have the ability to have them stay so close in this community of the suburbs of Milwaukee?
Well, Joan and I feel very fortunate because we have a lot of friends and like her brothers that their kids have moved, distances away, so they don't get to see them all the time. And we got to see not only our sons, but their kids while they're growing up. So we feel very fortunate about that.
Do you feel with Milwaukee's connections to its suburbs, it makes not only the city of Milwaukee, but the surrounding suburbs and Milwaukee as a whole stronger as a community?
Somewhat. It's not to the point that should be or could be, but somewhat. I mean, suburban people enjoy some of the things in the city, and you mentioned the entertainment. They like that, but there's other issues, where they're not as strong as they should be.
How did the suburbs change over time?
I don't know if they have changed, other than just growing, development. That's about it.
In terms of community, how did the suburbs develop? If they did at all?
I'm not sure exactly what you're asking. I think they've always been the same, other than the growth.
Okay. Okay. I feel like we have a great amount of content.
Okay.
And yeah.
Okay.
Thank you
Great.
so very
sure,
much.
You're welcome. Sure.
How was that experience for you?
Oh, fine. That's fine. Yeah.
Are you comfortable?
No, I'm comfortable.
Okay.
Just got into some subjects that, I didn't expect, but that's okay. But
Okay.
I don't know what else I could say about the history of Milwaukee. It's hard to say.
You've given us plenty, and
Oh.
I feel like this is very beneficial for just us telling our story with all these little bits and pieces that
Sure.
we
Okay.
didn't touch on before.
Great. Okay.